Grace was the happiest woman in the village that evening. For years she had known nothing but hardship, yet that day her heart was filled with joy. Her 2 sons, David and Michael, were coming back, not just for a visit, but to take her with them to the city. It was the moment she had prayed for, the reward for years of suffering. She had raised them alone after her husband Peter passed away. Life had been cruel. She carried baskets of vegetables on her head to the market, bent her back on other people's farms, and did every kind of small labor just to earn enough to pay for her boy's education. Her hands were rough, her shoulders weary, but her spirit never broke. One day she always whispered to herself, "My sons will lift me up. My tears will not be in vain." 3 days earlier, Grace had received the call that changed everything. It was David, her younger son. His voice was full of excitement. "Mama, get ready," he said. "Michael and I are coming home. We bought a house in the city. You will never suffer again. You will finally live in peace." Grace pressed the phone to her chest, tears rolling down her cheeks. She could barely believe it. That night, she prayed until dawn, thanking God. She took out her best wrapper, a one she had kept for years, waiting for a special day. She polished her old leather bag. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "my life begins again." But before leaving, she felt a duty in her heart. She had to visit her elder sister, Helen. Even though their relationship was never warm, Grace wanted to share her joy. She walked slowly to Helen's house, her face glowing with hope. Helen was sitting outside, her expression hard, unreadable. "Helen," Grace said warmly, "I came to tell you good news. My sons are taking me to the city. They bought a house. My suffering is over. I will finally live in peace." But Helen's lips did not curve into a smile. Her eyes, sharp and bitter, stared into Grace's. "So, they are taking you to the city to live with them? And I wasn't informed?" Grace kept her tone gentle. "I'm telling you now, sister. That is why I came. Tomorrow, before we leave, we will stop by to greet you." Helen nodded slowly. "All right. Safe journey," she said. Grace stood up and hugged her before walking away, never noticing how Helen's face darkened as soon as her back was turned. Helen had always envied her younger sister. She hated how, despite Grace's suffering, her children adored her. She hated that Grace was finally going to live in comfort. That night, as jealousy burned inside her, Helen decided that Grace's happiness must be destroyed. She went to see Victor, the village native doctor. His hut was filled with the smell of herbs and smoke. Helen's eyes were cold as she spoke. "I want those boys to turn against their mother. Let them hate her. Let them reject her. Let them choose me instead." Victor studied her carefully. Then he reached for a small calabash, shook it, and poured black powder onto a piece of cloth. "Do you have anything that belongs to them?" he asked. "No," Helen said, "but tomorrow I will make sure they eat in my house." Victor nodded. "Good. Mix this powder in their food. Once they eat, their hearts will change. But do not let your sister know." Helen's lips curled into a wicked smile. "Then she will lose everything," she whispered. The following morning, David and Michael arrived. Grace rushed out of her small mud house, her arms wide, tears streaming down her cheeks. "My sons, my pride, you are home." She hugged them tightly, breathing in the scent of the men they had become. Michael smiled warmly, returning her embrace. "Mama, we missed you so much." David, with his usual sharp energy, added, "Mama, pack your things. Tomorrow you'll be in the city. No more suffering. No more lonely nights." Grace clapped her hands joyfully, praising God aloud. She prepared yam porridge with fish, their favorite meal, and they sat together, eating and laughing like old times. But as they ate, Grace remembered her promise. Before we leave for the city, go and greet my sister Helen. She said she misses you both. She told them softly. David frowned, dropping his spoon. Do we have to, Mama? That woman never cared about us. She didn't even call when I graduated. Not even a message. Michael nodded in agreement. He's right, Mama. We are in a hurry. The road is long. Grace looked at them, her voice pleading. Please, my sons, she is your aunt. I already promised her. Just go and greet her. The brothers exchanged glances and sighed. Out of respect for their mother, they agreed. When they arrived at Helen's house, she welcomed them with a smile that did not reach her eyes. The table was already set, steaming jollof rice, fried chicken, pepper soup. I made this myself, she said proudly. Sit down, eat. This is your home. David shook his head politely. Thank you, Auntie, but we already ate. Mama made yam porridge. Helen's face stiffened. So, you ate your mother's food, but you cannot even taste. Mine? Michael spoke quickly. No, Auntie, it's not like that. We are just in a hurry. Helen's eyes darkened. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. My sons, do you know why I called you here? Because there is something you must know. Something your mother has never told you. The brothers stiffened. David frowned. What truth? Helen sighed, as if burdened by secrets. Your father, Peter, do you remember how healthy he was? Strong, full of life. Then suddenly, one night gone. Do you think it was natural? No, it was not. Your mother. She was the one who ended his life. The words hung in the air like poison. David and Michael froze. Their hearts pounded. Michael shook his head slowly. No, Auntie, that cannot be true. Helen touched his hand, her eyes heavy with false sorrow. Believe what you want. But remember, lies may comfort you, but the truth always returns. The seed of doubt was planted. When the brothers returned, Grace was sitting outside on a wooden bench, her best wrapper wrapped around her, a small travel bag by her side. She looked radiant, her eyes bright with joy. Ah, my sons, welcome back. Let me get my Bible, then we can leave. But neither David nor Michael smiled. Their faces were clouded with unease. Grace noticed it immediately. She hesitated, her heart tightening, but she forced herself to smile. She could not know that darkness was already creeping between her and her sons. Grace waited at the doorway of her small home, her bag neatly packed beside her. She had even tied her best scarf, the one Peter used to say made her look like a queen. Her heart was bursting with joy, convinced that in just a few hours she would finally leave the pain of the village behind. When David and Michael returned from their visit to Helen, she rose with a bright smile and said, My sons, are you ready? Let us go. The city awaits. But neither of them smiled. Their eyes no longer carried the warmth she had always known. David looked away, and Michael shifted uncomfortably. And David muttered in a flat voice, Mama, maybe you should stay. A city is not for everyone. The words struck Grace like a slap. She froze, staring at her son in disbelief. Stay, she whispered, her voice trembling. But David, you promised. You told me I would never suffer again. Michael would not meet her eyes. Maybe it's better this way, Mama, he said quietly. The city is too much for you. Aunt Helen, she understands us. She can stay close. You'll be fine here. Grace's lips trembled. She stepped back, her eyes darting between the two of them, as if searching their faces for mercy. Her voice broke as she pleaded, My children, I gave you everything, every coin I earned, every drop of strength in my body. I carried you with these hands. I bent my back so you could rise. And now you leave me? David's jaw tightened, the poison of Helen's words still clouding his mind. We've decided, Mama, he said firmly. It's better this way. Tears streamed down Grace's cheeks, but she forced herself to remain calm. She closed her eyes and whispered, "If that is what you want, go, but one day you will know the truth." Without another word, her sons turned and left, their footsteps fading into the distance. The moment the sound disappeared, Grace collapsed onto the bench. Her home suddenly felt colder, emptier than ever before. With trembling hands, she picked up her bag, but it slipped and fell onto the ground. Slowly, she walked down the narrow path that led to the village graveyard. The air was heavy, the sky dim as evening crept in. Kneeling before her husband's grave, she placed both palms on the cold cement and sobbed. "Peter, my love, can you hear me?" She cried. "Our sons, they have turned away. Your sister's blood has poisoned them against me. I carried them in my womb, I raised them with my sweat, but today they rejected me. Oh, Lord, what have I done to deserve this? Fight for me, Lord. Let the truth be revealed." Her cries echoed through the graveyard, but only the wind answered Dot. Meanwhile, in the city, the brothers tried to carry on as if nothing had happened. They buried themselves in work, but the wound lingered. One night, Michael entered the sitting room where David sat typing on his laptop. He sat in silence for a moment before speaking. "David," he said gently, "what we did to Mama, it was wrong. She suffered for us. She gave us everything she had, and we left her behind. We chose. And Helen, but she never contributed to our lives." David didn't even glance up. His fingers kept striking the keys. "I'm not interested in this talk," he snapped. Michael's voice grew firmer. "Brother, think about it. Mama deserves better." The sound of the laptop slamming shut broke the silence. David's eyes blazed as he turned to him. "Enough! You always defend her. Always. Maybe you should go back and live with her, if you care so much." Michael felt his chest tighten, but his voice was calm. "Maybe I will," he said. Dot back in her house, Helen was restless, though she had already succeeded in keeping Grace away. From her sons, she was not satisfied. She wanted more. She wanted control of their lives, their wealth, their future. She returned once again to Victor's hut, the air thick with smoke and strange powders. "The charm is fading," she said sharply. "Michael is beginning to see clearly. I want you to make David hate him. Let them become enemies." Victor frowned. "You are asking for dangerous things," he warned. "Blood may answer." "But—" Helen's eyes glittered with determination. "I don't care." "Do whatever it takes," she demanded. The old man sighed and handed her another pouch of powder. "Put this in David's food," he said slowly. "From then on, he will see his brother as his enemy." Helen's lips curved into a smile. "That is all I want." Days later, her wicked plan began to take root. David confronted Michael in the office, his voice sharp with accusation. "You've stayed too long under me, Michael. You should go and build your own life. You're a grown man now." Michael stared at him, stunned. "What are you saying?" "I was with you from the beginning. We built this company together. I sacrificed everything for us." David leaned closer, his eyes cold. "Exactly. You stayed too long. You're too comfortable. Get out." Michael's heart burned with pain. "You've changed, David. You're no longer my brother. You're Helen's puppet. She has poisoned you." David laughed bitterly. "At least she opened my eyes. Get out, Michael. I don't need you anymore." That night, Michael packed his bags. As he walked away from the company he had helped build, memories rushed through his mind. How he and David once prayed together in the early days. How they cried when they had nothing. How they celebrated small victories as if they were kings. Now it was all gone, all because of one woman. The journey back to the village was long, but his heart was heavier than his steps. By the time he arrived, the sun was setting. Grace was sitting outside, weaving a mat. When she looked up and saw him, her eyes widened. "Michael!" she gasped, dropping the mat. He dropped his bag and ran into her arms. "Mama, I'm sorry," he said, choking on his tears. "I couldn't stay there. I want to be with you. I want to stay here." Grace held him tightly, stroking his head as she whispered, "You will stay, my son. You will rest, and you will rise again. Those who mocked us will one day bow. This is only the beginning of your journey." Michael looked into her eyes, and for the first time in months, he felt peace. The next morning, he woke early, swept the compound, fetched water, and prepared firewood. He wanted to do everything to make her smile again. Grace watched him with quiet pride, her heart finally eased. Later that day, she called him outside, where a young woman stood shyly by the gate. "Michael, this is Anna," Grace said with a smile. "She has been helping me so much. When the villagers mocked me and refused to sell to me, it was Anna who stood by me. She bought food for me, cooked for me, and gave me courage. She is like a daughter to me." Michael turned to Anna, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you for helping my mother. You don't know what that means to me." Anna smiled gently. "Your mother deserves kindness. She has suffered enough." At that moment, Michael realized that not everything was lost. Even in the darkness, light could still be found. And though Helen's schemes in the city were far from over, the seeds of hope were already sprouting in the village. Morning in the village came soft and quiet. Michael rose before the sun, swept the yard, and carried water from the well. Grace watched him from the doorway, smiling faintly, her heart comforted by his presence. He told her he would begin working on his father's land that day, and she blessed him with words filled with hope. The soil was hard, but Michael worked as though each strike of the hoe was cutting away the shame that had been placed on their family. Sweat rolled down his back as he dug furrows and cleared weeds. Near midday, his hoe struck something unusual. Instead of the dull thud of stone, there was a bright metallic ring. Kneeling, he brushed the earth aside and uncovered a shard of raw gold. For a long moment he simply stared, hardly breathing, and whispered a prayer. "God, what is this? After all the rejection, after all the pain, here lies a gift waiting." Tears blurred his eyes. He wrapped the piece in cloth and buried it again, marking the spot only in his memory. That evening he returned home with a strange light in his face. Grace asked no questions, sensing the weight of the secret he carried. Later Anna arrived with food. She had been helping Grace quietly, standing by her when neighbors mocked. Michael thanked her with sincerity. She only smiled and said, "Your mother deserves kindness." For the first time since leaving the city, Michael felt hope burning, steady within him. But far away in the city, Helen's envy deepened. Though she had turned David against his mother, she was restless. Michael's return to the village unsettled her, and she feared he might rise again. She went back to Victor, the native doctor. "The charm is fading," she complained. "David listens too much to his brother. I want you to make them enemies." Victor frowned. "This is dangerous. Once invoked, it may destroy more than you intend." Helen's eyes glinted. "Do it. I have come too far to stop now." Reluctantly, Victor handed her a pouch of black powder and warned, "Use it carefully. If the order is broken, the curse will return to you." Helen only smiled, certain of her victory. Soon after, David began lashing out at Michael. The poison in his heart grew. He accused him of laziness, of holding him back. Michael reminded him of the years they built the company together, of the sacrifices they both made, but David only grew harsher. "You've stayed too long under me," he said coldly. Go and start your own life." Michael's heart shattered. "You've changed, David. You're no longer my brother. You're Helen's puppet." But David laughed bitterly and ordered him to leave. That night, Michael packed his things and walked away, tears stinging his eyes. He remembered their early struggles, their shared prayers and victories, and knew it was all gone, ruined by Helen's lies. The journey back to the village was long, but his resolve was firm. When Grace saw him standing at the gate, she cried out and ran to him. He dropped his bag and fell into her arms. "Mama, I couldn't stay. I want to be here with you." She stroked his head and whispered, "You will stay, my son. You will. Rest, and you will rise again. This is only the beginning of your journey." From then on, Michael worked harder than ever. Each day he returned to the land, slowly uncovering more gold, always hiding it carefully. He decided he would go quietly to the city later, confirm its value, and register the land properly. It was not only wealth, it was a message from heaven, proof that truth and loyalty are never forgotten. At night, Grace prayed. She lifted her hands and asked God to protect her sons, to break every lie, to defend the innocent. "Do not let wickedness have the final word," she whispered in the darkness. Peace settled over her heart, as though heaven had already answered. Meanwhile, Helen's schemes pressed forward. She sent her son Mark to work under David, instructing him to move money slowly from the company. "Make it vanish like smoke," she told him. Mark obeyed eagerly, slipping through weak spots in the accounts. David, blind with anger and pride, signed whatever papers were placed before him. Each day the company bled, while Helen and her son smiled. But the curse she prepared was not finished. Victor had given her a small black pot and strict instructions. It must be used before dawn, and her eyes had to be the first David saw when he woke. "Do not celebrate too soon," Victor had warned. "Pride invites punishment." But Helen paid no attention. Holding the pot in her hands, she whispered, "By tomorrow, everything he owns will be mine." In the village, Michael worked by the fading light of dusk, his arms sore, but his spirit steady. Grace watched him with pride, Anna by her side carrying a basket of cassava leaves. The three of them shared a simple meal while the air smelled of rain. Michael looked at his mother and silently promised, "This land, this gift, it will lift her first far away, in a room filled with shadows." Helen placed the black pot on her table and blew out the lamp. She rehearsed the moment again and again, how she would stand over David at dawn, how he would open his eyes and belong to her forever. She did not see that the darkness she courted was already curling around her like smoke. Night was heavy in the city. Helen sat alone in her room, staring at the black pot Victor had given her. The instructions echoed in her mind. Before dawn, his eyes must meet yours, and you must not speak until the light appears. She rehearsed it again and again, smiling at the thought of David falling fully under her control. She imagined the wealth, the company, the houses, everything in her hands. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "he will no longer belong to himself. He will belong to me." But in the village, Grace knelt on the cool earth of her small room, praying silently while Michael slept. Her voice was steady, even as her eyes brimmed with tears. "Lord, protect my sons. Break every curse, every deception. Let the truth speak louder than lies. Lift Michael higher than the shame placed on him, and open David's eyes before it is too late." She did not know why she felt such urgency, but she prayed until her knees ached. At dawn, Helen crept into David's room. The pot trembled slightly in her hands as though alive. She moved to his bedside and leaned over him. David stirred, turning toward her just as his alarm clock was about to ring. Helen held her breath, waiting for his eyes to open. But before he could, the pot vibrated. violently. Her son, Mark, half asleep, entered the room and asked, "Mama, what are you holding?" The words broke the silence, shattering the ritual. The pot cracked open, releasing a black smoke that filled the room. Helen screamed as the smoke wrapped around her and Mark, twisting their bodies with pain. David jumped from his bed, shouting, "What's happening?" But before he could understand, Helen and Mark ran blindly into the street, clutching their heads. Their screams echoed until a speeding car struck them both. In seconds, silence returned, leaving their bodies broken on the road. David stood frozen, unable to process the horror. His knees gave way, and he dropped to the floor. In that moment, the fog in his mind lifted. He saw every memory of his mother, her worn hands carrying baskets, her tears when he graduated, her smile when he said she would never suffer again. He saw how he had insulted her, called her names, and turned away when she needed him most. "Oh God," he cried, his voice raw, "what have I done?" That same morning, in the village, Michael returned from the field with dirt on his hands and a quiet joy in his heart. He had uncovered more gold, enough to confirm that his father's land was rich beyond imagination. He walked into the small house where Grace was preparing breakfast and said softly, "Mama, this land will change everything. We will no longer be mocked." Grace looked into his eyes, touched his cheek, and whispered, "It is God's reward. But remember, my son, wealth is a servant, not a master. Use it wisely." Michael nodded, his heart swelling with determination. Later that day, Anna arrived with food. Grace smiled warmly. "This girl has been my strength," she told her son. "When the village turned its back on me, it was Anna who stood by me." Michael looked at Anna with gratitude. "Thank you for standing with my mother. That alone means more than I can ever repay." Anna lowered her eyes, her cheeks warm. But her heart quietly rejoiced. Back in the city, David wandered through the wreckage of his mind. His company was failing. Mark had already siphoned funds, leaving gaps too wide to hide. His relationship had collapsed. Now his aunt and cousin lay dead on the road. He returned to his empty apartment and whispered, "I have nothing. Nothing but shame." Then, almost against his will, he picked up his phone and dialed a number he had not called in months. In the village, Michael was helping Grace pound cassava when the phone rang. He wiped his hands and answered. A voice on the other end was shaky, filled with guilt. "Michael, it's me, David." Silence stretched between them. Michael's jaw tightened, but before he could hang up, David pleaded, "Please don't. Cut the line. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm sorry. I was blind. I hurt you. I hurt Mama. I let lies rule me. Please, brother, let me see you again." Michael's heart wrestled between anger and compassion. Finally, he sighed deeply. "Come," he said simply. "We will listen to what you have to say." When David arrived days later, he stepped into the small yard with trembling legs. Grace was sitting outside, weaving a mat. The moment she saw him, she froze. Tears welled instantly. "David," she whispered. He fell to his knees before her, clutching her feet. "Mama, forgive me. I was blind. I let hatred rule me. I called you names. I abandoned you. I believed lies. Please, Mama, do not cast me away." Grace bent down, lifting his face with her trembling hands. "A mother never stops loving her child," she said softly. "You are my son. I forgive you." Michael stepped forward, his eyes still heavy with caution. David turned to him, voice breaking. "Brother, I wronged you more than anyone. I pushed you away. I betrayed our bond. But please, let us not die as enemies." Michael's chest tightened, but as he looked at Grace, he remembered her words. Family is where forgiveness lives. He placed his hand on David's shoulder and sighed, "We are brothers. Let us begin again." For the first time in many months, the three of them embraced. Grace's tears fell freely, but they were tears of healing, not grief. Anna stood in the doorway watching, her heart swelling with joy. She whispered to herself, "This is how God restores what was broken." Yet even as peace returned to the little home, Michael knew the journey was only beginning. The gold hidden beneath the soil carried not just wealth, but responsibility. Their bloodline had been tested, their hearts scarred, but they had survived. What remained now was to rise not for greed, not for revenge, but for the honor of the family that had once been forgotten. The village had not seen such a scene. In years, three people clinging to each other, as if the world had almost torn them apart. Grace held both her sons tightly, her voice trembling as she whispered, "We are family again. No lie, no curse. No jealousy will break us now." David wept like a child, and Michael's steady hand on his brother's back was the final seal of forgiveness. For a long moment they stayed that way, and the little house, once heavy with sorrow, filled with peace. But peace was never meant to be idle. The next morning, Michael rose early, his thoughts circling around the gold hidden beneath his father's land. He had spoken nothing of it yet, but the time was coming. He worked the soil again, and with each strike of his hoe, more golden veins revealed themselves. Standing there, sweat running down his face, he whispered, "This land waited for me. It waited for us." When he returned home, Grace and David were speaking quietly. David's face was still weighed with guilt, but Grace touched his shoulder. "You will not carry shame forever," she told him. "God has given us another chance." David lowered his head. "Mama, I lost everything in the city. The company is broken, the money gone. I let Aunt Helen and her son blind me, and they destroyed everything." Grace only shook her head. "We did not lose everything, my son. You came home. That is enough." Michael listened silently, then finally spoke. "We have not lost as much as you think, brother. There is something on Father's land, something that can change our future." Both Grace and David looked at him in surprise. He unwrapped a small cloth from under his bed and revealed a piece of raw gold. Their eyes widened. Grace covered her mouth, whispering, "God in heaven." Michael explained how he had found it, how he had kept the secret, how the land seemed to hold more than anyone could imagine. David stared at the gold, his shame doubling, yet hope flickered in him again. "Michael," he said softly, "you are the true son. You held to Mama when I betrayed her. Now you are rewarded." Michael shook his head. "No, brother, this is not mine alone. It is for all of us, for Mama, for our name. But we must be careful. Wealth can divide faster than poverty." Grace clasped both their hands and prayed aloud, "Lord, guide my sons. Let riches not destroy what love has restored." The days that followed brought a change to their lives. Michael quietly arranged to travel to the city with samples of the gold, meeting an expert who confirmed its value. The land, once mocked as useless, held enough to transform their family forever. Michael registered it legally, determined that no one could claim it away. When he returned with the news, Grace's eyes filled with tears again. "Peter's land," she murmured. "He left us more than memory. He left us a future." David, though still burdened by his failures, began to work alongside his brother. He confessed often, telling Michael, "I do not deserve your forgiveness." But Michael would answer, "Family is not about deserving. It is about choosing to stand together." Slowly, trust began to grow again. Meanwhile, Anna continued visiting. She cooked, helped Grace in the fields, and laughed with Michael in a way that softened his heart. One evening, as the sun sank low, Michael told her, "Anna, you are more than a friend to my mother. You are part of us now." She blushed, but did not turn away. Grace, watching from the doorway, smiled knowingly. News of the gold spread eventually. Villagers who once mocked Grace now came with wide eyes and polite greetings. Some whispered that fortune had finally chosen her, while others envied in silence. Grace carried herself with quiet dignity, never boasting, only saying, "God lifted the lowly, that is all." But for David, the whispers cut deep. He remembered how easily envy had corrupted Helen. One night he told Michael, "I fear the same curse may follow us. People will not rejoice at our rising." Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we must rise with clean hearts. If we repeat their mistakes, the gold will only bury us." It was not long after that Michael took a bold step. In front of Grace and David, he turned to Anna and said, "You stood by my mother when no one else did. That alone tells me everything. I need to know. Anna, I love you. Will you be my wife?" Tears filled Anna's eyes as she nodded, whispering yes. Grace clapped her hands and blessed them, saying, "This house, once filled with tears, will now be filled with laughter." Their wedding was simple yet radiant. Neighbors gathered, some curious, some envious, but most in awe at how the once forgotten widow now celebrated with joy. Grace looked at her sons and her new daughter-in-law and whispered to herself, "The bloodline was almost broken, but God remembered us. What was forgotten is restored." As night fell on their wedding day, David stood apart, gazing at the stars. Michael approached him quietly. "You are still troubled," he said. David sighed. "I fear the city still holds my failures. I left ruins behind." Michael looked at him firmly. "Then we will rebuild, not for pride, not for greed, but for the family. Redemption is not in what we lost, but in how we rise again." David's eyes filled, and for the first time he believed it not in that moment. The story of their family turned a new page. The widow once abandoned, the son once betrayed, the brother once blinded by lies, all stood together under the same roof. Their redemption had begun, and with it the promise of a future no curse could erase. The wedding had passed, and laughter still lingered in Grace's yard. For the first time in years, she slept without fear, her dreams light with the knowledge that her sons were together again. Michael and Anna worked side by side in the fields, their voices rising in gentle songs, while Grace sat under the mango tree, weaving mats with steady hands. David stayed mostly quiet, helping when he could, but his heart was unsettled. The gold had changed everything, yet he feared it might also test them. Word of their fortune had spread far beyond the village. Strangers arrived under the guise of friendship, carrying smiles too wide and questions too sharp. Some neighbors who once mocked Grace now came with baskets of fruit, calling her Mama, as if they had never turned their backs. Grace received them politely, but her eyes were cautious. "We must not let praise deceive us," she warned her sons. "Wealth draws both light and shadows." One evening, David returned from the market looking troubled. "Michael," he said, "men in the town are whispering about us. They say the land is rich beyond measure. Some even suggest we cannot handle it alone." Michael set down his hoe and answered calmly, "Then let them whisper. The land belongs to us. It is Father's gift, and it will not be taken." But David shook his head. "You don't understand. They will not stop with words." Not long after, a group of men came to their home local officials, dressed in fine clothes, their voices heavy with authority. They spoke kindly at first, praising Michael's hard work and Anna's devotion. But soon their tone sharpened. "The government has heard of your discovery," one man said. "This land must be registered with us. For your safety, we will take control of the gold. You will receive compensation, of course." Michael's jaw tightened. "This land was my father's," he said firmly. "He tilled it with his own hands. No paper, No official, no threat can erase that. We will register it properly, but the gold belongs to us." The men exchanged looks. Their leader smiled thinly. "Be careful, young man. Riches can vanish faster than they appear." With that, they left, but their warning lingered like a shadow over the house. That night, David paced in the yard. "They will come back," he muttered, "and next time they won't be polite. We need protection. We need power." Michael looked at him steadily. "No, brother. What we need is wisdom. If we let fear rule us, we will fall into the same trap Helen did. Wealth must not make us slaves." Grace, who had been listening, placed her hands on both their shoulders. "Remember, my sons, the greatest treasure is not what is in the ground, but what is in your hearts. If you lose that, no gold will save you." Still, David's heart wrestled with unease. Days later, he traveled secretly to the city to meet with an old contact, hoping to find allies who could secure their fortune. But what he found instead were men eager to exploit his desperation. They promised him influence, papers, even weapons if needed, but at a price. "You cannot trust your brother to handle this alone," one whispered. "Join us, and we will make sure you control everything." For a moment, David's old pride stirred. He remembered how easily he had once believed Helen, how quickly. He had chosen lies. But then Grace's words echoed in his mind. "If you lose what is in your heart, no gold will save you." Shaking his head, he stood and left without another word. Back in the village, Michael faced his own test. A wealthy merchant approached him privately, offering a large sum for immediate access to the land. "Think of your wife, your mother," the man urged. "They deserve comfort now, not later. Take the money and leave the trouble to us." Michael studied the man's face and replied quietly, "My mother already has peace. My wife already has joy. That is enough. Take your money and leave us." The merchant's smile faded, and he stormed away, muttering threats under his breath. When David returned, he found Michael and Anna sitting with Grace under the tree. He confessed everything, how men had tried to sway him, how pride had almost led him astray again. Michael listened, then said softly, "We cannot walk this path divided. If greed enters one of us, it will consume us all." David bowed his head, tears in his eyes. "I almost lost myself again, but not this time." Grace reached for his hand. "My son, redemption is a journey. You stumbled, but you rose. That is what matters." Together, the family made a decision. They would form a cooperative with trusted villagers, ensuring that the wealth was used for schools, clean water, and farming tools. "If this blessing is only for us," Michael said, "it will curse us. But if it is for everyone, it will remain a blessing." David agreed, and Anna smiled, knowing that love and generosity would guard their future better than any weapon dot. As weeks passed, the once forgotten family became a pillar of hope. The same villagers who had mocked Grace now worked beside her. Sons, and the land that had once been scorned became a source of pride for all. Yet Grace often reminded them, gold is not our crown. Love is, and love must be tested every day. One night, as the moon bathed the fields in silver, Michael stood with David at the edge of their father's land. "Do you see it, brother?" Michael asked. "This soil carried both our shame and our salvation. We must never forget that." David nodded slowly. "I see it, and I swear I will never let envy or pride destroy us again." Behind them, Grace's voice carried softly through the night as she prayed, her words a shield over the family. And though challenges still lingered, beyond the horizon, they knew one truth. Together, they could withstand any test wealth placed before them. The village had changed. Where once Grace was mocked, now people came to her home with respect. The cooperative Michael and David created was beginning to bear fruit. Children carried books to new classrooms. Women fetched water from pumps instead of walking miles, and farmers returned from the fields with tools that made their work easier. Grace often sat under the mango tree, watching with quiet joy. "This," she told her sons, "is the true treasure, seeing others lifted, because we refuse to be selfish." Yet even as blessings multiplied, shadows stirred. Not everyone rejoiced at their rise. Some in the city whispered that 2 village men had stumbled upon wealth too great for their hands. Old enemies, sensing opportunity, crept closer. Among them was a man named Lawrence, a former business associate of David's, who had once lost money during Helen's manipulations. To him, the family's fortune was an insult. "They abandoned me to ruin," he told his partners bitterly. "Now they live like kings. I will not rest until I take what they call theirs." Back in the village, life seemed calm, but David carried unease. At night, he would pace in the yard, remembering Helen's schemes, her lies, and how easily he had fallen under them. Sometimes he would wake from sleep drenched in sweat, hearing her voice whispering, "You are mine." One evening Michael found him sitting alone, staring at the stars. "What haunts you, brother?" he asked. David sighed. "The past. I cannot shake it. Even in Mama's forgiveness, I feel Helen's shadow still chasing me." Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "The past cannot chain you unless you offer it your hands. We must keep moving forward." But the past had a way of returning uninvited. A letter arrived one afternoon, carried by a stranger on a motorbike. It bore the seal of a law firm from the city. David read it aloud, his voice tightening with each line. "They claim Aunt Helen once filed a deed for father's land. They argue it belongs to her descendants." Grace's face paled. "But Helen is gone. She has no claim." Michael's jaw hardened. "This is Lawrence's doing. I can smell his hand in this." The village buzzed with rumors. Some feared the land would be seized. Others whispered that curses never truly die. Anna tried to comfort Grace, reminding her that truth would prevail, but even she felt the chill of uncertainty. That night, Grace prayed longer than usual. "Lord, we have walked far, but the shadow of envy still hunts us. Defend what you gave, and let our enemies see that your hand cannot be undone." David could not sleep. He walked the fields alone, the moon lighting the furrows where gold still glimmered beneath. He remembered his own greed, how quickly he had once chosen lies over love, and his heart pounded with fear. "What if I fall again?" he whispered. Suddenly Michael's voice came from behind. "Then rise again. That is what matters." David turned, startled. His brother had followed quietly. "We cannot fight shadows with fear," Michael continued. "We must face them with truth." Days later, Lawrence himself appeared in the village, dressed in a fine suit that looked out of place in the dust. He arrived with papers in hand and men at his side. Smiling too broadly, he greeted Grace as if they were old friends. "Mama Grace," he said smoothly, "surely you know me. I was once close to your son in business. I only came for what is mine. The land is disputed, and I have proof." Grace looked at him with eyes that had seen too many lies to be fooled. "Proof built on envy is no proof at all," she answered calmly. Michael stepped forward, his voice steady. "Leave this place. You have no claim here." Lawrence's smile thinned. "Bold words, boy, but courts do not listen to boldness. They listen to papers, and I have them." David, trembling but resolute, faced him. "You may have paper, Lawrence, but we have truth, and truth cannot be stolen." Lawrence's men shifted uneasily, sensing the conviction in David's tone. Still, their leader sneered and left with a warning. "Enjoy your illusion while it lasts. Soon the law will decide, and you will be nothing again." That evening, Grace gathered her sons and Anna. "This battle will not be won with anger. she said firmly. It will be won with patience and faith. The same God who revealed Helen's lies will reveal Lawrence's. Her words steadied them, though the weight of the coming fight pressed heavy. In the days that followed, villagers rallied around the family. They remembered the new school, the water pumps, the kindness they had received. If they try to take your land, one elder declared, they will face all of us. Michael's heart swelled with pride, realizing that true wealth was not measured in gold, but in the loyalty of those who now stood with them. But David's struggle continued in silence. One night he confessed to Anna, "I fear I am weak. If Lawrence tempts me with promises, I might fall again." Anna looked at him firmly. "Weakness is not falling, David. Weakness is refusing to rise. You rose before, you will rise again. Trust the forgiveness you've already been given." Her words sank deep into his heart. For the first time, David felt that Helen's shadow was beginning to lose its grip. Still, the storm was not over. Papers had been filed, courts would be called, and Lawrence was determined. But as Grace lit a lamp one quiet night, she spoke words that became a shield over them all. Shadows may stretch long, but they cannot stop the dawn. The summons arrived on a gray morning, carried by a clerk with a stiff face and dust on his shoes. Grace held the folded paper with trembling fingers, her eyes scanning the words she barely understood. All she knew was clear enough. They were being called to the city court to defend the land. "So it begins," Michael said quietly, taking the paper from her hand. David clenched his fists. "Lawrence will twist every lie he can find, but we will not run." The news spread through the village quickly. Some villagers whispered in fear, others promised their support. The elder who had spoken before came again to their house. "Do not be afraid," he told Grace. "The truth walks slowly, but it never falls." His words gave her strength, yet she could not shake the knot of dread in her stomach. That night, as she prayed, she whispered, "Lord, you gave us this land. Do not let the enemy snatch it. Let justice shine." When the day of the trial arrived, the city courthouse loomed tall and cold, its walls echoing with footsteps and murmurs. Grace walked between her sons, holding Anna's hand for strength. David's face was pale, but his jaw was set. Michael carried himself with quiet determination. Inside, Lawrence sat with his lawyers, dressed sharply, his smile thin and mocking. When his eyes met David's, he leaned back smugly, as if victory were already his dot. The proceedings began with Lawrence's lawyer rising first. His voice was smooth, his gestures confident. He spoke of papers, signatures, and old deeds allegedly filed by Helen. "The evidence is clear," he declared. "This land was never fully transferred. By law, it belongs to my client." He held up yellowed documents, stamped and signed. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Grace's heart pounded. She closed her eyes and prayed silently. When it was their turn, Michael stood, surprising many who expected the older brother to speak. His voice was steady, but carried the weight of fire. "My father, Peter, worked that land until the day he died. He left it to us, his sons. Everyone in our village knows this. Helen, my aunt, never tilled that soil, never planted one seed. She only came to steal with lies. And now her ally comes with more lies dressed as law." The judge asked for proof. Michael presented records of taxes his father had paid, testimony signed by village elders, and the new registration he himself had completed. Then David rose. His hands trembled, but his voice carried raw honesty. "Your Honor, I once believed Helen's lies. I turned against my own mother, against my brother. And because of that, I know exactly what deception looks like. Lawrence stood with Helen. He profited from her schemes, and now he comes again. But lies do not make ownership. Blood and truth do. The room fell silent at his confession. Even Lawrence's lawyers shifted uneasily. Lawrence himself sneered, but the confidence in his eyes flickered. He rose suddenly, pointing a finger. At David, you are a traitor to your own blood. You admit you turned against your mother. Why should anyone trust you now? David did not flinch. Because I came back. Because forgiveness restored me. Because a man who admits his wrong is more trustworthy than one who hides behind false papers. His words rang through the hall like a bell. Grace, sitting quietly, felt her tears flow. She whispered, "Thank you, Lord. My son has spoken truth." The judge ordered a recess. Outside, whispers filled the courtyard. Some said Lawrence still had the upper hand. Others believed the family's honesty would sway the case. Michael sat beside his mother, his hand steady on hers. "Do not fear," he told her. "Truth walks slowly, but it will reach the finish." Inside Lawrence's chamber, his lawyers pressed him. "The case is weak," one muttered. "Their evidence is strong. We may lose." But Lawrence's pride burned. "No," he snapped. "I will not lose to peasants. If the court does not give me victory, I will take it another way." His eyes darkened with desperation. When the session resumed, the judge questioned the authenticity of Lawrence's documents. Forensic experts revealed inconsistencies. The ink too new, the stamps mismatched. One by one, the lies unraveled. The judge's voice was stern. "This court does not honor falsehood. The land belongs to the rightful heirs, David and Michael, sons of Peter, under the care of their mother, Grace." The gavel struck, echoing like thunder. Grace clasped her hands to her mouth, sobbing with relief. Michael exhaled deeply, his shoulders finally light. David closed his eyes, whispering, "Thank you, God." But Lawrence's fury boiled over. He rose, shouting, "This is not the end. You think you've won, but I will destroy you. You will regret ever crossing me." Security guards moved quickly, dragging him out as his voice echoed like a curse. The courthouse, villagers who had traveled with them cheered. "Justice has spoken," they cried. Grace lifted her hands to heaven. "Truth has spoken," she corrected softly. Anna hugged Michael tightly, whispering, "I knew it would be." So? Yet even in their victory, Michael's face remained serious. "Lawrence will not stop," he warned. "The court may have ended the case, but his hatred is not finished." David nodded, his voice low. "Then we must be ready. Wealth is a blessing, but it is also a battlefield. We must guard both the land and our hearts." As they returned to the village, Grace looked at her sons walking beside her. The path had been hard, filled with betrayal and shadows, but now she saw them, walking in truth. She whispered to herself, "The trial is over, but the journey continues. And as long as we walk in light, no darkness can overcome us." The court's gavel had struck, but peace did not follow. Though Grace's family returned home with victory, shadows moved silently behind them. Lawrence, humiliated before the judge and mocked by whispers in the city, let bitterness consume him. "They think this is over," he muttered, pacing in his dark office. "If the law fails me, then fire and blood will not." His associates tried to warn him, but pride deafened his ears. He gathered a group of men, desperate and reckless, and swore to take the gold by force. In the village, life returned to its rhythms. Children laughed outside the new school. Women fetched water from the pumps, and the land once cursed was now celebrated. Grace sat beneath the mango tree, humming an old hymn, her heart lighter than it had been in decades. Yet Michael felt unease prickling at the edges of peace. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, he said to his brother, "I fear Lawrence will not rest. His pride is wounded, and pride rarely sleeps quietly." David nodded. I see it too. The way he shouted in the court. He will strike. Again, but this time not with papers. Grace overheard and placed her hands on both their shoulders. Do not let fear rule you, she told them gently. If evil returns, we will face it as one. Remember, the same God who exposed his lies will expose his violence. The storm broke sooner than they expected. One night, while the village lay asleep, trucks rolled quietly down the dusty road. Men with masks and weapons poured out there, torches flickering like angry stars. Lawrence stood among them, his eyes wild. Tonight, he shouted, we take what is mine. Michael woke first to the sound of shouting. He ran outside, his heart pounding, and saw flames beginning to lick the edge of the field. They're burning the crops. He cried. David rushed out behind him, grabbing a stick from the yard. Grace stumbled from the house, clutching her Bible, her voice already raised in prayer. Lord, defend us. The attackers advanced, their weapons glinting in the firelight. Lawrence pointed toward the house. Seize them. Bind the mother and the sons. The land will be ours before dawn. Michael stood firm, his voice clear. This land is not yours, Lawrence. It never was. You can burn the crops, but you cannot own what God has given. David, though trembling, raised his stick and shouted, If you want to touch my family, you will have to go through me first. The clash was chaotic. Villagers woke to the sound and came running with whatever they could carry, machetes, stones, buckets of water to fight the fire. Women screamed, children cried, but men joined Michael and David, forming a wall of resistance. This is our land too, one elder shouted. We will not let thieves destroy it. Lawrence grew frantic as his men faltered against the rising tide of villagers. He lunged toward Grace, grabbing her arm. All of this is because of you. Old woman, he spat. Grace looked at him with unshaken eyes and said, No, Lawrence, all of this is because of envy, and envy devours its own. Before he could strike her, David and Michael rushed forward. David shoved him back, and Michael wrenched his hand away. Lawrence stumbled, falling into the dirt as the fire's glow lit his face. The villagers closed in, surrounding him and his men. Some shouted for blood, but Grace raised her hand. No, she commanded. Let the law finish what the law began. Do not let violence make us like him. Lawrence thrashed, but the fight had drained from him. His men fled into the night, leaving him alone in the circle of angry villagers. At dawn, the police arrived, called by Anna, who had run barefoot through the dark to reach the nearby station. Lawrence was taken away, his threats now hollow echoes. When silence finally returned, the village stood together in the charred field. Smoke curled into the morning sky, but the heart of the land was untouched. Michael bent down, scooping a handful of soil into his palm. Still strong, he said. They tried to destroy it, but the ground still holds. David, breathing hard, placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. And so do we. Grace lifted her eyes to the rising sun, her voice trembling with gratitude. We were tested by lies, by pride, by fire. But truth stood, love stood, and no darkness could overcome it. Villagers murmured their agreement, some weeping, some raising their hands to heaven. Anna took Michael's hand, and he held it tightly, knowing the owing. Future was no longer shadowed by fear. That evening, as peace returned, David sat alone with Grace. Mama, he said softly, I once betrayed you. I nearly destroyed us. But today, standing against Lawrence, I felt something I had lost. I felt like your son again. Grace touched his face with gentle hands. You never stopped being my son. You only lost your way. But even shadows cannot erase blood. Michael joined them, sitting close. "We began as 3 broken hearts," he said, "but now we stand as one family restored. This is the reckoning and the rising." Under the quiet of the stars, the widow once abandoned and her 2 sons sat together, not as victims of betrayal, but as survivors who had faced the storm and endured. The gold still slept in the soil, waiting, but they knew now that the true treasure was not beneath their feet. It was between them unbroken love, tested and proven stronger than any curse.